to have the peace and power of God flowing through you. As the worship was coming forth, there was just an inspiration being released to open ourselves up to let the peace and the power of God flow. At least I was experiencing it. There's things in our lives that are not always easy to face. There's challenges and realities and even sometimes some difficult stuff. And so we can't go through life ignoring that reality. But what we can do is to open up our heart, our soul, our mind, spirit, just open up ourselves, say, Lord, let your peace settle in me deep within me. And I believe when the peace of God is within us in a deep sense, we can go through life with confidence, even if it's not always easy. Anyway, last Sunday I delivered a message here based on the blessing that God gave to Abraham. I will bless those that bless you, and I will curse those that curse you. And I went through a series of blessings that he had released to Abraham and different incidences in the Bible where they walk through that. And then I switched to the today and now. And I picked most of my comments out of a book that I had read titled, As America Has Done to Israel. And I released an example of what happens when you reach out to the Jewish people today. Whether you reach out in blessing, you're going to receive a blessing. Whether you reach out in curses, you're going to receive a curse from God. And so I got two challenges. I was after that presentation last Sunday, I was challenged with two challenges. And one of those challenges was from a brother. He said, you brought out a whole bunch of negative things, a whole bunch of stuff, how people went against Israel, went against the nation of Israel, and how a curse came on their lives or their country. He said, is there a blessing side to it? Is there a book written with the blessing side? And I'll say, well, that's a good challenge. He said, if there is, you should preach next Sunday on the blessing side of people who have blessed Israel. And present that. And so I took the challenge. I said, I'll do it. And you know what? It was hard to find books or comments or articles or anything written on people who had blessed Israel and the blessing, the corresponding blessing that came on their lives that followed. I was like, wait, is this like the newspaper? The newspaper writes all these negative articles about accidents and wars and happenings and crime, and every once in a while you find a little article on a hero, someone who rescued someone that was drowning or someone that rescued someone out of a burning building thing. Every once in a while you find a little article written. But other than that, it seems like the news is largely portraying the other side. And so I dug into the Bible. I was like, there's got to be some examples where after God gave that blessing to Abraham, there has to be some examples of someone that reached out and blessed Abraham and or his descendants, and there has to be a recorded blessing that came on that person or nations for doing it. And so I started digging. And the first one I came to was Genesis 14. And Genesis 14 is after Abraham was called out and he was journeying forward into the land that God called him. And he ventured up into or out into what is now the land of Israel and the area of Jerusalem. He came into that area. And here in Genesis 14, verse 18. And Melchizedek, king of Salem, brought forth bread and wine, and he was the priest of the Most High God. And he, Melchizedek, blessed him, Abraham, and said, Blessed be Abram of the Most High God, possessor of heaven and earth. And blessed be the Most High God, which has delivered thine enemies into thy hand. And he, Abraham, gave him tithes of all. I think I read that correctly there. He, Abraham, gave tithes to Melchizedek for some reason. But at any rate, when I saw that, it was the first person that I found in reading through Genesis that came and directly spoke a blessing to Abraham. And then I tried to follow the life of Melchizedek a little bit. Melchizedek apparently was king of Salem, which later became Jerusalem. And from the time of Abraham, for many years thereafter, according to what I found, that area lived in peace. Until the descendants of Melchizedek decided to fight against the purpose of Israel, and then they were destroyed. The city of Salem was overrun by the Jebusites, I think, and the city was called Jabez. Later, David captured the city and called it Jerusalem. What was the purpose of Melchizedek's descendants? What was God's purpose for them? Apparently we'll never know, because they fought against Israel sometime in the future after this. Melchizedek didn't. Then another one that I found where someone reached out and was a blessing to the Jewish people is a very profound and very simple one. This one is written up in Joshua 2. And Joshua 2 has to do with, this is written after, oh no, wait, there's one before that though. Yeah, there is one before that. Joseph was sold as a slave into the land of Egypt. Pharaoh bought him, or Potiphar, whatever, one of the higher-uppers there in the land, bought him and set him to work as a slave. And I think he had it nice. I don't think his owner was mean. But then he was falsely accused, thrown in prison. He was in prison for X amount of years. I'm not sure exactly how long he was in there. The power of God was on him. He found favor in the eyes of the prison keeper and found favor and friendship with the other prisoners in there. And then there was two prisoners that had dreams. It was the one dream was from the butler, and the other one was from the baker who had been put into prison because they weren't doing the king's work properly. And they told Joseph their dreams. He asked God for interpretation. He gave the interpretation of their dreams to them. And exactly as he said that was going to unfold, that's what happened. The one was restored back to his position of serving the king. The other one had his head chopped off because he wasn't acceptable in the king's eyes for some reason. Later, Pharaoh had a dream. In his dream, he had this dream about the 7 fat cows and 7 thin cows. And the 7 thin ones ate the fat ones, and you couldn't see that they ate anything. Also corn. 7 stalks of big, healthy corn, and 7 really skinny, scrawny ones. And the skinny, scrawny ones ate up the fat ones, and you couldn't see they ate anything. So the king was sure this was symbolic. And he was in a tizzy, almost having a nervous breakdown trying to figure out what this means. And then one of his workers, the one that had been restored, I think it was the butler. Was he the one that had been restored? Butler had been restored to his position. So he went and said, hey, I remember when I was in prison, there's a kid back there, a Hebrew, a boy from Hebrew. He can translate dreams. He told me a dream that I had, and it came out just like he said. And Pharaoh was like, bring him out here. So they brought him out, they cleaned him up, made him presentable, cut his hair, put some clean clothes on him, and he came out, and Pharaoh told him his dream. And he gave the interpretation. Pharaoh said, I hear that you can interpret dreams. And he said, God is the one who interprets dreams. But tell me, and I'll ask him. And so he relayed the dream, and Pharaoh said, oh, give me the revelation. What is it? And Joseph said, there's going to be 7 years of drought. No, there's going to be 7 good years. And then there's going to be a drought and a famine such as you never experienced here before. But if you prepare, and in the 7 years, you take the bountiful harvest and the surplus and you store it, you as a nation will get through this. You know what? Pharaoh had 2 choices at that point. He had the choice to believe this young, uneducated Hebrew lad from prison. He had a choice to believe his interpretation and accept the advice that this kid was giving. He was a young man. I'm not sure how old he was at that point. Or he had the choice to harden his heart and say, who are you, you uneducated Hebrew, go back to your cell. If he had done that, I am absolutely sure the famine would have destroyed Egypt. Because that's what the dream was about. But because he heeded the words of this young Hebrew, which, by the way, was a recipient of the blessing that God had given to his father Abraham, grandfather, great-grandfather, back there a little ways. And so Pharaoh decided to bless this young lad, pull him out of prison, keep him out of prison, and put him second in command in the land. And the blessing of God unto Abraham through Joseph came onto the nation of Egypt. Pharaoh also found out that this young Hebrew slave has family back in another land, and they're suffering from the drought. And so he said, bring your family over here. Let them dwell right here with us in safety and prosperity. And so Pharaoh, unbeknownst to what he was actually doing, he was blessing the descendants of Abraham. And basically the nation of Israel, in a very small beginning, was moved into the land of Egypt to be preserved. Because they probably would have perished over there. The drought was severe. Of course, God would protect them because he said, I'm going to make a nation out of you. And so the nation of Egypt flourished under the ruling of that Pharaoh and that second in command, which was Joseph. Later, the next pharaohs that came in line forgot about the power, the blessing that Joseph brought with him. And they took these children of Israel and made them slaves. And a curse descended on the nation of Egypt. This slavery bondage lasted for 400 years. That's when Moses was called forth. Moses went out, led the children of Israel out of bondage, out of the land of Egypt, out into the wilderness, to freedom. But they came to the Red Sea, and they were blocked. In the meantime, Pharaoh was so intent on bringing them back and forcing them to serve him that he went out with the power of his army to either bring them back or destroy them. By the mighty hand of God, the Red Sea was parted. The children of Israel crossed to the other side. The Red Sea closed in and destroyed the army of Egypt. The nation of Egypt was a world power at the time that they were blessing Abraham's descendants. When they decided to either destroy that nation, the children of Israel, or force them back into slavery, when they made that choice, the hand of God came down in supernatural ways. And the land of Egypt, the nation of Egypt, ceased from being a world superpower and has never risen to that status again. The land of Egypt and the nation of country of Egypt does exist, but it is not, and never has been a world superpower. So the children of Israel continued their journey through the wilderness, 40 years, all that happening out there. When they finally crossed the Jordan into their final commission to establish the beginning of the nation of Israel in that way, they came against these great, huge walled cities, and one of them was Jericho. So now going to Joshua 2, I find another incident of the first incident there was the nation coming against the nation. It was Egypt coming against the descendants of Israel. Here we find one individual person, one person, who decided to bless the descendants of Abraham, these children of Israel. And we'll read this and we'll see what kind of a blessing was bestowed on her and her family after that. So in Joshua 2, I'll just read this section here. And it was told the king of Jericho, saying, behold, well, first of all, 2 spies went out to spy out the city of Jericho. How big is this? What are we encountering here? How are we going to deal with this? It was told the king of Jericho, saying, behold, there came 2 men hither to the night of the children of Israel to search out the country, spies. And the king of Jericho sent unto Rahab, saying, Bring forth the men that are coming to thee, which are entered into thy house, for they are come to search out the country. They were spies. And the woman took the 2 men and hid them. And I'll probably just stop reading there. But anyway, that was happening there. She took these 2 men and hid them. And this is why. Verse 9. She said unto the men, I know that the Lord hath given you the land, and that your terror is fallen upon us, and that all the inhabitants of the land are faint because of you. For we have heard how the Lord dried up the water of the Red Sea for you when you came out of Egypt, and what he did unto the kings of the Amorites, and those that were on the other side of Jordan, Sihon and Og, whom you utterly destroyed. And as soon as we heard these things, our hearts did melt, neither did there remain any more courage in any man because of the Lord your God. For he is God in heaven above, and in the earth beneath. And so this woman chose to believe in this God who was delivering his children, the children of Israel. She became a believer. Many others didn't. Many others were afraid of this God, but many didn't put the faith in God like she did. Now, therefore, I plead with you, I pray you, swear unto me by the Lord, there she's showing faith in the Lord, since I have showed you kindness, that ye will also show kindness unto my father's house, and give me a true token, and that ye will save alive my father, my mother, and my brethren, and my sisters, and all that they have, and deliver our lives from death. You see that? These 2 spies that were children of Israel, that were sent into Jericho to find out what is the status, how big is this, how we're going to fight this. They were spies. She protected them. And she hid them. And she told them why I'm doing this. She said, I now believe in your God. And I'm going to protect you and hide you and keep you. And I want you to deliver my family when you come to destroy this city. And the men said unto her, We will be blameless of this thine oath which thou hast made us swear. So they swore to it. They said, We will protect you. Behold, when we come up into the land, thou shalt bind this line of scarlet thread in the window, which thou did let us down by, and thou shalt bring thy father and thy mother and thy brethren and all thy father's household home unto thee. And so these spies told him, then you need to hang a red scarf here by your window as a symbol of this covenant that we have. You protected us, and we swore that we will save your lives. And they said, we will not be blameless of this oath that we just had. But so that we know that you're still in, hang that red scarf in your window, and you will be saved, and your household. Okay, so now we know how Jericho went down. It did not go down by the strength and power of man. The walls of Jericho fell by the power of God after the children of Israel marched around it 7 days. 7 times accordingly blew their trumpet and stuff on the last day. And the whole city just crumbled. There's probably a big old mushroom cloud of dust that went up. Those walls were on the average 12 to 15 feet thick and up to 30 feet high. Some of them made out of dust and mud and brick and stone, and they didn't have poured concrete. But one section of the wall stood standing straight up. Which section was it? Rahab's house. And she had taken, before this, when the children of Israel started marching around, she went out. Mom, Dad, come. Brothers, sisters, come. In my house is safety. Just stay here with me. These 2 spies were then given a commission by Joshua, go find, in the ruins, go find Rahab and her family. Bring them out here. Who remembers, who knows what powerful thing became of this good act based on the blessing of God being bestowed on Rahab and her family? Who knows what it was? Rahab became part of the lineage of Jesus. Somewhere, one of these children of Israel, one of the boys, descendants of Abraham, somewhere in this mix, either found Rahab and took her to be his wife, or one of her daughters At any rate, in their descendants, in her descendants, Jesus was born from. Wow. I will bless those who bless you, Abraham, and curse those who curse you. And so we can see by these two examples of Egypt and this one individual, Rahab, that this blessing of Abraham is actually national and individual. And again, what is our mindset toward the land of Israel and the Jewish people right now? What do we think about the Jews in New York? What do we think about the Jews that come to intercourse as tourists? What do we think about these people? How do we feel in our hearts toward them? Another powerful example of a nation turning against the nation of Israel was later on, way later after Jesus was crucified. There's a lot in between there, but it's a lot of moving parts of nation rising against nation. But at any rate, every time that a nation rose against the descendants of Abraham, those that rose against him lost land. Lost land, lost soldiers, lost people, and Abraham gained every single time. Abraham's descendants, the children of Israel, gained every single time, unless they walked in disobedience. Nebuchadnezzar took over, but they were again later on released, went back and rebuilt, built the whole thing back up and became powerful again. After they crucified Jesus, during that time, they were under the rule of Rome. Rome was a world superpower at that time. Rome ruled the entire, what is now the Middle East, even up into Great Britain and way down past Israel. They were a world power at that time. But they fought against Israel. In the end, moved in, destroyed the city of Jerusalem, killed many of the children of Israel, and Rome consequently was removed from their position as a world power and has never risen to that point again. They're still a country. They still have a functioning government, but they never ever rose to a world power again. Move on forward. Many, many years later, we move into the founding of the United States of America, and I brought that out last week. George Washington, Abraham Lincoln, boldly, profoundly, intentionally, up front, stood for the immigration of the Jews from all nations into the land of America to live as free citizens of America. A lot of the other nations at that time where the Jews were in mass numbers, they were being persecuted because of how different they were. And George Washington publicly opened up the borders of the United States of America and said, "You're welcome here. The descendants of Abraham, come into this land and live in peace and safety." And they came by the thousands. Even later, there was a decree went out from Ulysses S. Grant against the Jews in a certain area of Georgia. He said, drive everyone from their houses, because he thought they were troublemakers. And they appealed. One of their leaders appealed to Abraham Lincoln, and Abraham Lincoln immediately stopped and revoked that command and allowed them to live in peace and safety. All the presidents in between George Washington and Abraham Lincoln worked for and stood with the children of Israel in this land. Some of them even advocated for their safety in other nations. Woodrow Wilson was one of those. After World War I, again, the children of Israel were in a dire situation. They were being persecuted. People were setting out, different countries were setting out in different areas at the same time. Turkey was one of them. They were intent on completely destroying the children of Israel, wiping them off the map. Some of them were down in what is now Africa. Some were up in the upper area of the land of Israel, which is close to Turkey there. They were scattered around. Woodrow Wilson took it upon himself, as President of the United States, sent American ships over into the coast of where these children of Israel were and invited them to come out of their danger zones, so to speak, took them onto these ships and took them to safe places. One ship carried 6,000 Jewish people to land in a place of safety. From George Washington all the way up to Woodrow Wilson here in 1917, which was right after World War I, the United States became a world power. You see the correlation? As the presidents of the nation, or the kings of a nation, or the pharaohs of a nation reached out to provide safety and provision for the Jewish people, that nation would rise to a world power status. The United States of America has stood with the children of Israel and the land of Israel for the most part, all the way from George Washington all the way up through. Roosevelt made a mistake, but it was personal. It didn't necessarily affect the United States of America. And here's the second challenge that I had been given after last Sunday's message. I had given the statement here last Sunday that Roosevelt was a perfectly healthy man when he was working against allowing the Jews to establish their nation, 1938. However, I was challenged and corrected. Roosevelt was not a perfectly healthy man. He had health issues. He struggled with polio. He was partially disabled. He could somewhat get around with use of crutches and stuff. He had polio, and there was another sickness or disease. He was a sick man at that time. But he was functioning. He was a functioning president. He was not laying on his deathbed. People were expecting him to die. He had just traveled over to Great Britain, where they had this world conference to see what they're going to do with this Middle East crisis and what they're going to do with Israel. After that was done, they met with a number of different nations. After that was done, instead of coming straight home, he went down to Saudi Arabia and met with King Saud. And his purpose of meeting with King Saud was to secure oil and gas rights so that it would have free access or easy access and guaranteed access to oil. While there, King Saud persuaded him and got him to commit to not allowing the Jewish nation to form a nation and become the land of Israel again. He pledged that I will not allow this to happen. He came home from that trip. Not long after he was home, he got a letter from King Saud saying, "Do you still mean what you said?" He wrote a letter back stating, "Yes, I still stand with you. I will not allow the nation of the Jewish people to establish a nation in the land of Israel." That is when he died. A week after writing, signing, and sending that letter is when he died, unexpectedly. But he was not a perfectly healthy man, so that was the correction that was given. He was dealing with a number of different sicknesses, but he was still a functioning president of the United States, and they were not expecting him to die anytime soon. But it did happen. The president right after him, Harry S. Truman, he was the vice president, so he automatically took office because the residing president died, so he was in office up until just a little before 1948, to where nation of Israel was established as the land of Israel, a nation of Israel. Harry Truman was very instrumental. He stepped right into that position right on the heels of Roosevelt's letter. He basically reversed the whole thing, and he went diligently to work and saw to it that the land of Israel could be established as a nation. From there all the way up to 1991, the presidents worked for the nation of Israel. From 1991 on, there was that back and forth, halfway supporting. And so anyway, that's what I found out of that study. That there is an individual, if I am a blessing to the Jewish people in whatever large or small ways I can. I'm not a leader of a nation. I'm not about to make national decisions that affect the nation of Israel in a large-scale way. But I am an individual that believes in the blessing that was released by God unto Abraham that said, "I will bless those who bless you," in later verses, "and your descendants." And so I stand with the intention to be a blessing to the Jewish people in whatever way I can, fully expecting to receive the blessing of Abraham on my life. At the very least, as an individual follower of God, a believer in the Lord Jesus Christ, a believer of the Word of God, at the very least, if we pray for the peace of Jerusalem and we stand with Israel in prayer and in compassion, we will, I believe, receive at the very least light, peace, and revelation from God. But I believe we'll also receive financial blessings, stability in different ways. And that way, I believe that blessing, if we reach out and bless the children of Israel, I believe the blessing from God is going to be on our lives in ways that we cannot even tangibly put a finger on and say, well, this blessing is from God because I did this for the children of Israel. It's just going to be a blessing. And so I would encourage you, if you don't have a mindset of gentleness and peace and goodwill and a prayer for Israel, I would encourage you to ask God to give that to you for your sakes and for the honor and glory of God.